Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Radio Free Urbanism. We are back after quite a long break, and we have a packed show today. We're going to talk new e-bike laws, LA Metro updates, zoning changes in Washington State, all sorts of interesting things. We're going to see if we get to all of that stuff. But I'm not alone today. I have Alex Davis again. Say hi, Alex.
Hi, Alex.
Oh, very funny. Anyway,
I'm a
Alex
comedian. I've got a lot more jokes.
That was great. So that's the type of thing Alex is going to be bringing to the show. He was a special guest last time, but I said, do you want to host another show with me? I don't know. Should we call you a host? I mean, you are hosting it.
That's concerning. I mean, I can't stop you.
Okay, Alex, my co-host, is going to help me today, especially with his vast and intricate knowledge of LA Metro. I found out that he actually watches board meetings. One of maybe 4 people who do. But first, we are going to talk about New Jersey. Alex, you used to live in New Jersey. What was that like?
I did. It was, it's very funny. People are like, LA, it's not a real city. It's one big suburb. And the funniest thing is that this is people saying this in New Jersey. It's not true about LA, but it is actually true about New Jersey. Everything
It is one big suburb.
It's pretty crazy. It is they'll be the first to tell you it's the most densely populated state. They're very proud of it, especially among urbanists. That's probably because like less than half of the state is like not urbanized. So it's pretty incredible. So, I mean, one thing about obviously like North Jersey, the transit is pretty good. I'll throw down, I'll defend it. I'll shill for my former employer, but a lot of the state, the transit has, it's wanting, it's typically, it's an incredible job for like an intercity statewide network. But, if you're trying to go to the store in this sort of like suburban sprawl in New Jersey, I'm talking about your East Brunswicks. I'm talking about, your suburban Lakewood. You're going to want to get yourself a bike, if you're not all about, driving and you're living the urbanist lifestyle. But to avoid being run over on those, triple decker jug handles or whatever, insane stuff they have cooked up at NJ you're going to want it to be pedal assisted. You're going to want to be able and then
I can tell you're segueing into our story here.
Well,
so let me tell
I have some very, very bad news for all of those people. You're all criminals and you're all going to jail.
Okay. Let me give you some context. So I'm looking at an article here about New Jersey's new e-bike law, which is called New Jersey E-Bike Riders Will Require a License and Registration and Insurance under a newly signed law. Now, the first interesting thing about this law, it was signed by Governor Phil Murphy. Now, if you look up Governor of New Jersey, you will not see Phil Murphy. That is because he signed it on his last day in office. It actually might be the last thing he did as the governor of New Jersey, as far as I know, which is kind of just an interesting twist in this story. But the main thing that this law says is that New Jersey is going to move away from the 3-class e-bike classification used in 46 U.S. states, and instead will use its own categories. These new categories are low-speed electric bikes, which is pedal assist up to 20 miles per hour, motorized bike, which is throttle assist up to 28 miles per hour, and electric motorized bicycle, anything that can go over 28 miles per hour. To meet the new requirements, all e-bike owners, so all 3 of these categories, will need to be registered and have a valid license to ride anywhere in New Jersey. To be able to hold a valid license, riders will need to be at least 15 for a motorized bike license or 17 for a driver's license. Owners of e-bikes beyond the low-speed electric bike category will also require an insurance policy. So if you can go more than 20 miles an hour, automatically you need insurance. But here's the one nice thing they did. Everybody in New Jersey has 6 months to meet these requirements. Now, Phil Murphy says, quote, "It is clear that we are in an age of increasing e-bike use." Correct. Yay.
Possibly not anymore, though, thanks to him. So
that requires us to take action and update regulations that help prevent tragedies from occurring. Making our roads safer for all users has been a key priority for my administration. Now, People for Bikes has shared its criticism of the law, stating that, quote, the law sets New Jersey up to become the most unfriendly state for bicycling in the entire country. They say, quote, the final version of this bill eliminates the current 3-class e-bike classification, which we said already, negatively affects retailers in New Jersey and tourists from other states whose e-bikes will not be legal to operate. So I'm thinking along the beach, bike shops that rent out bikes, too bad now they can't anymore because you need a license. Continues to place a burden on vulnerable populations by requiring a registration and a driver's license, doesn't provide a clear plan for implementing the law, and fails to address the actual safety issues that contributed to more than 500 fatalities and 3,000 serious injuries on New Jersey's roadways in 2025. Motor vehicles, including unregulated high-speed e-motos. That is the story. Now we're going to go over our thoughts on the story. Alex, what do you think about this?
Well, I would say, I mean, first, last day of the lame duck term, that is when all the best legislation gets signed. I would say that, look, people for bikes, they're very mad. They say that New Jersey, this is going to be the most unfriendly state for cyclists. Many people would already say New Jersey is already just the most unfriendly state for everything else. So this is really just
the most unfriendly people.
Yeah, the most unfriendly people in general. So this is really just bringing everything up to date, right? And this is, look, after you do your little, here's the thing, like cyclists, they don't get to have that little, routine with the state mandated gas tank fillers. So, it's going to be, I think people will just have to get used to the experience of you're biking along, a cop pulls up, whoop, whoop, and they're like, okay, sir, do you know how fast you were pedaling?
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe like 20 miles per hour because that's the physical limit of this bike. And be like, okay, I'm going to need to see license and registration. It's like, bro, I don't have any of that. I'm on a bike. It's like, okay, we're going to need to take you in. We're going to need to arrest you because you're driving without a license. And then,
wow.
Yeah, that's how it's going to go.
If, by the way, if anyone is listening is wondering, I assume the people listening are already they're already on our side. But perhaps if you want to explain this to a family member of why this is so egregious, who doesn't quite get it, what I would say is the whole reason for licensing and registration in the first place, right? That was a thing that was invented for automobiles because before automobiles, you couldn't really no person could own a machine as widely deadly as a car has the potential to be, right? And so you didn't need to license your feet, which is how most people got along. You didn't even need to license your horse because horses are really not that deadly, and most people didn't even own one. And so the whole reasons for if you look at the history of why it was invented was once people got their hands on cars, even cars going 25 miles an hour, which is the top speed of early automobiles in the early 1900s, already there was death, pedestrian death, that went wild, especially in cities. And the whole point of licensing was to be able to track people, to figure out if there was a hit and run, if anyone had seen the license, how to figure out who the person was. And so the reason it's so illogical to apply that to bikes, well, e-bikes, right? Because this is an e-bike law, to be fair. But it's still quite unreasonable. If you look up the statistics, and for my old job, I dealt a lot with crash statistics. It's very difficult. I think in the entire state of California, there have been 5 pedestrian deaths involving an e-bike. And, usually, as far as I know, which I maybe should have looked this up before the show, but I can do it afterwards. It was with the highest class of e-bikes, right? It was the ones, some of which are actually technically illegal, the modded ones, the ones going more than 28 miles per hour. Most certainly not pedal assist, right? Pedal assist
Are
limited.
those technically illegal, or are they just technically motorcycles?
So it depends. This actually depends. There are actually, and I dealt with this because it's a big issue in Santa Barbara. If you buy an e-bike that was limited to 28 miles per hour and you mod it yourself, this is now an illegal vehicle that was never given permission to be licensed on the roadway in the first place, right? Like if you somehow change the speed limiter. So that, in my opinion, is you're within existing law. You're already in hot water, and you should be, because modding your vehicles and making them non-road legal is not a great thing. And then there are also companies that sell kits to mod them, I guess, and that's like very wink where you take off the pedals after they're ordered, and then the speeding. I don't know. I haven't looked into
educational purposes only.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a different category, and that should be cracked down on, regulated, whatever. But the idea that a pedal assist, and if you don't know what pedal assist is, it's basically only when you pedal, there's an electric motor that helps you a little bit. It's particularly helpful on hills. The idea that that needs a license, again, the whole purpose of which is because you need to regulate deadly machines, which pedal assist bikes are definitely not, is crazy. The only effect that it's going to have, I think, is going to make the entrance to biking higher, right? It's making it more difficult to make the choice to bike because now you have to go through all this paperwork and figure out how to get a registration, and it's a headache. It's an absolute headache. And I don't know if that was the goal. I don't know who. I think that this whole thing was probably responding to like angry nextdoor.com comments, but like totally ridiculous is my take.
Is there? I wonder if there was somebody. This is a little like. Are we gonna do journalism on air?
Go ahead.
I mean,
who wrote it? Who sponsored it?
Yeah.
And like why? And what district? Like yeah, like what's their deal?
Okay.
Oh, I have another opinion about this thing. The age limit really gets to me because saying that you have to be 15 to use a pedal assist bike, I almost have this like meme in mind that I could make where it's like, you design your neighborhood so kids can't go anywhere without asking their parents to drive them, and then you make it illegal for them to use an e-bike. And then step 3, then you complain that kids are inside playing video games all the time.
Yeah, that
it's
really
like you took away the one thing that they could use to actually like expand their horizons a little bit. And yes, it's dangerous to e-bike because of cars. In a world where kids were just e-biking on dedicated paths, believe me, it would not be dangerous. I mean, there would be some skinned knees, but yeah.
Yeah. So okay. Yeah.
What did you find, Alex?
So the bill passed the Senate. I have the vote tally and I have the names, but I don't really have these assembly members memorized, so the names don't mean anything. But it was it passed the Senate with a vote of 27-11, and then the Assembly approved it on the same day. So they were really working fast to get this thing through, 52-10. So,
Wow.
I can't find any quotes of people actually in the legislature opposing it. But what it appears from just the record that I'm seeing on the NJ legislature website is it was just rushed through.
Wow.
And
if only government could work that quickly when it's California high-speed rail.
yeah, I know. I'm like, they rushed it through. Nobody knew about it. I sound like Karen Bass talking about SB 79, but
people knew about it. That is
yeah.
for sure. Wow.
Yeah, but in this case, it really is true. This was just right through. And now, to be fair, like interest groups commented on it. Like there were some environmental groups who were like, I have a quote for, okay, Doug O'Malley, Environment New Jersey. Yeah. Okay. The quote is this is it from Bicycle Coalition, throwing the bicycle out with the bathwater. Nice.
Very.
Really, that's a sizzler right there. It did not sizzle enough to stop the law from getting approved. So
yeah, and it's like I don't know what happens next. I don't know if there's a way to fight it now that's already passed. But you mentioned New Jersey being like one giant suburb. Except fun fact, the Pine Barrens, which I just learned about this week, that there's all this area in New Jersey where the dirt is sandy, and so it was never really settled. But anyway, New Jersey being most people in New Jersey living in a suburb. I've said this before on the show, and I'll say it again. I really do think that e-bikes are one of the solutions to suburbia. And what I mean by solution as in it addresses a lot of things that until e-bikes were invented, most urbanists thought land use was going to be the main thing that solved, let's say, walkability, that solved livability, that made the environment, right, like greenhouse gas emissions better, to lower driving. The thing about changing land use, which is another story we're going to talk about later on the show, by the way, is that takes a really long time, right? Like even if you pass laws that people are allowed to build duplexes and corner stores and whatever, it's going to take a long time for neighborhoods to change, and each city is going to try and stop it and whatever, and not every neighborhood ever will. But e-bikes, man, 10 years ago when it wasn't really a thing, if you were stuck living in a suburb, especially if you were a kid and your parents were not willing to drive you somewhere, you really were stuck. And there are so many neighborhoods in the US, and I lived in one once, where like you literally cannot walk to anything. It's insane. E-bikes all of a sudden turn that hour-long walk into a 15-minute bike ride. And yes, there are kids who don't know the rules of the road, and yes, they're going through stop signs, and yes, they're riding on sidewalks when they're near dangerous intersections. Actually,
and that's why they should all be arrested. By
exactly, and it's like maybe not
anti-state troopers.
Yeah, it's like, well, like it's just so sad to me that now that option is being taken off the table for all those people. If only they put this much energy into making roads safer. You mentioned the jug handles. I don't know if everyone knows what that is.
Yeah, well, it's this thing where New Jersey is a very creative place when it comes to traffic engineering. So much stuff. I mean, yeah, this is the solution that New Jersey uses on their, insane spaghetti-like arterials interchanges to avoid left turns. Instead, you go into a little loopity-loop road off to the right, and then that meets the road you were on at a right angle, and then you can wait safely behind a light, and then just cross the road instead of timing it to not get T-boned by oncoming traffic. It is way safer, but there is a lot of very confusing stuff when it comes to driving in New Jersey. So
it might be safer for the drivers, but then are you creating more crossing? It seems like you would actually be creating an additional crossing for pedestrians and cyclists because
yeah, you are, if there's not another road meeting that one anyway. But there's also a case where you're creating an additional slip lane where there's the mini at grade cloverleaf where you cross the intersection, peel off into a loop-de-loop, and then get fed back into the street you just crossed. So there's that. So there's the at grade cloverleaf, the jug handle, and these other more complicated combinations that involve ramps looping over the road, and then sometimes combined with roundabouts. It's all very wonderful for the traffic engineers.
A lot of thought and love has been put into moving automobiles around in a lot of the country. When you said roundabouts, though, I am quite partial to roundabouts. It sounds like, you wouldn't need a jug handle if you just had a nice big roundabout. I visited a gigantic roundabout one time when I was in Europe on the border of France and Switzerland. There was a roundabout that was it was like half a mile across. Oh my gosh, just so beautiful. No grade separation needed. But all right, shall we move on to LA Metro updates?
Unfortunately, we shall.
Okay, well, everybody, we have some updates from LA Metro. One good, one bad. Alex, take your pick.
Well, can I ask what the good one is?
I mean, the Sepulveda line is the good one.
Right, yes. Yes. So the monorail is dead. The monorail man and his delightful 1920s boater hat, they've packed up. They're leaving. It's very sad. But it had to happen. It's this subway under the Sepulveda Pass is going to be a lot faster. It's going to actually serve UCLA instead of having it be a separate branch or gondola or electric bus, which is literally already exists.
Yeah.
No. They're gonna have a subway station, tunnel bored, right in the middle of the quad.
Which is crazy. That's a quad that I walked through every day on my way to class when I went to UCLA. And we do have a number of viewers or listeners, I should say, who may not have any familiar with Los Angeles geography. Basically, the majority of Angelinos live on a wide open plain between the ocean and the mountains. That's from downtown to the ocean is actually about 16 miles. So LA is not actually a coastal city technically. I mean, it does touch the beach, the city limits, but people live all throughout there. Then there's a chain of one single ridge of mountain, on the other side of which is a large valley home to 3 million people. It wasn't really settled and developed very much until after World War II, so it has absolutely horrible urbanism. Basically, every square mile, which is where the farms were, wait 1 second. Can you hear that background noise? Yes?
No, I don't think so. But
okay.
That's maybe because I've jerry-rigged this setup with this speaker and have turned it very low and kept it away from the microphone.
Anyway, so the valley is basically divided into mile squares almost perfectly. on the border of each of those miles is a very wide street, like 6 to 8 lanes, and then you have suburban homes in between. That's the valley. Even though it has bad urbanism, it really only has 3 exits, 2 that face downtown, and 1 that goes through a small canyon through those mountains to West LA, which is a huge job center. It's the I-405, which has some of the worst traffic of any segment of freeway in the entire United States. In the teens, in a grand display of the true meaning of induced demand, Los Angeles spent, I believe, was it $2 billion or $20 billion? It was some horrendous number of money to add 1 lane to each side of the 405, and traffic decreased for 2 years before increasing travel time, I should say. And travel time is now 20 minutes longer than what it was even 10 years ago and before they did that widening, because 3 million people in the valley, and whatever the number is of people who try and get over that hill every day through that canyon, adding 1 lane was not going to increase the capacity enough to satisfy. So there really does need to be a subway underneath.
Maybe another lane might.
Okay, I hate to say this. Technically, induced demand does have a limit to it. So, I mean, it is true. I don't want anyone, I don't want any of the people at LA Metro to hear this, because they might try and do this instead of build a train. But technically, if you added, let's say, 50 lanes to each side, it's possible that there wouldn't be traffic during rush hour on the 405, because that might actually satisfy whatever the demand is. Although when people got off the freeway and then like went on to like 4 and 2 lane roads, you'd have like insane exit ramp backup situations. But
so we need to make them 8 and 16 lane roads.
Yeah, exactly. Now you're getting it.
It's interesting you say that, because LA Metro is kind of trying to do that. They're working on an express lane project where, they hope to have hot lanes, which, people listening to this will probably know what that is. It's the same thing that they have on the 110 right now, where they're, you're driving along and everything's completely crowded, but if you pay some money, you can drive in this lane that has no traffic in it, and the price changes in order to make it so that there's never so many people driving in it that it has a traffic jam. And don't worry if you think that this is a war on the working class. Don't worry, you can ride in it for only $1.75, or actually, basically actually nothing if you want, if you so choose, by taking the J line. But basically, there are a lot of buses that go over the Sepulveda Pass, and the tragedy is that they're all stuck in traffic, just like the rest of everybody else. And even though they've spent this money adding this extra lane, they didn't think to, do the thing that they have on the other highways, the express lanes. And only now the express lane project is going to come in. I forget, last time I looked at it, was like 2036.
Oh, so it actually might come in after the subway is finished.
Yeah, that's the crazy part.
Wow. Yeah, no, the Sepulveda Pass is a nightmare for anyone who hasn't had to go there. Oh my gosh, it's just horrible. But I have a radical idea. What if we somehow made it so that all the cars, all the people in them going to the same place, they all got linked together and all traveled at the same speed. And then we put those cars on a guided roadway. Okay, I'm doing the old meme of turning things into a train.
Yeah,
but anyway,
man, this is a tired meme. I'm about to say
it's a tired
Waymo.
meme.
This is a Waymo.
It's a very tired meme. But so basically,
why are you trying to reinvent the Waymo?
I've ridden a Waymo once. It was terrifying because it didn't signal when it was changing lanes.
That's crazy. Yeah, this is now we're just giving the audience the red meat they crave. But my Waymo, I had a terrifying Waymo experience. And I just want to caveat this with, like, all the evidence points to Waymos are definitely already safer than human drivers in the environments that they're operating in. So I just want to make that very clear. We're very sad for that one cat that Waymo killed in San Francisco. But like humans are like, they've already cleared the very low bar of human drivers who are very dangerous.
Yeah. It's just a question of what will they do how will they reshape our cities in negative ways, not necessarily are they more or less dangerous.
Very negatively is my assumption.
Exactly.
the thing is that, like, I mean, when I was in one, we were waiting to go straight at an intersection, and there was, there's a left turn green, and then there's a green circle for, straight and yield left. And it was waiting to go straight, and then the left green arrow comes on, and then for a second it lurches forward and then hits the brakes.
Oh.
Right? So this is the computer. Now, you expect this from a human, right? It's like, oh, green, go. Oh, shit, it's an arrow. This is the robot doing that. And what's interesting is that, like, these robots are trained off of the empirical way that humans drive. So I think what may have happened is that, like, it somewhere in its, in the deep recesses of its, like, machine learning, it has observed this happen a couple times where there's, a green arrow, and then the person, like, lurches, is like, oh, wait, nope. Mm-hmm. And it's just mimicking that.
Oh, that's
even
weird.
Though it really shouldn't be. Like, that's like, because at the end of the day, even though it feels very sophisticated, it really is just like a very complicated parrot that's just like memorizing patterns and repeating them. So I do think, even if it's already better than humans, we might have, in the way that we've trained them, which is empirically off of humans, we may have already created a, like, self-fulfilling limit on how safe they can be.
Although from what I understand, when I was reading about Waymo, the engineers can actually go in and correct for things like that in the model. So, I mean, theoretically, like you said, it is already safer.
Yeah.
Although, when I would bike home in LA, there were Waymos everywhere in the neighborhood I lived. And I had 2 incidences where I really don't think that it saw me on a bike. Like, it was coming right towards me and stopped kind of last minute. But yeah, the data so far suggests that it's safer. But if there's the actually a Not Just Bikes video he made about how cities might be reshaped by driverless cars, and it's actually very, very good. It's an hour-long deep dive, and it's more about how it will change the urbanism, because the argument is that they're safer than human drivers. Basically there's a future which could exist in which people argue that non-automated things should be taken off the roadways to make them even safer. Actually, not unlike this New Jersey bike thing. And therefore, cyclists aren't automated. They're the ones making the road dangerous. We might as well take them off. People in crosswalks, if we don't want them to get killed, we shouldn't have crosswalks at all. We should have, like, pedestrian bridges. It's like this kind of logical path that could get.
Well, what's interesting is that, like, and by the way, this was brought up. That specific one with the pedestrian crossings and the politics around that was brought up by Chuck Marohn, like, back in, I think, Confessions of a Recovering Engineer. And, he was like, and who knows if it would actually work like this, but his observation was like, look, there is a sort of built-in enforcement mechanism where, like, you respect the lights if you're a pedestrian, because if you don't, you'll be killed. Which that's a pretty brutal way to put it, but, like, that's what's going on. And if we have this situation with cars, and by the way, where you can just, like, walk out and then they stop for you, and I'll tell you, like, I've tested this like 3 times now with Waymos. I've jumped out into the street in front of them to see what happens, and they screech to a stop. It's really fun.
Wow. And wait, so your point is what then?
Well, his point is that people will eventually learn this and just cross, and there will be no sort of mitigation whatsoever. No management of turn taking at intersections, and then it'll have to, there will have to be, like, fences and stuff put up to try to stop people.
Right.
And that's the same. That's the Not Just Bikes prediction. He almost certain. I mean, he's heavily influenced by Chuck Marohn, and I'm not so completely sure about it, because it just kind of goes against human instinct to just, like, run out in front of the cars. But that might literally just be because we are used to self-driving cars. I think it's going to be a very long time before we have all self-driving cars on the road. Like, with no human operated cars. I think that this is, like, if you just think about, like, the politics of it, it's just going to be very, very hard. I think
But
that,
you
yeah.
agreed that it would be a negative future with self-driving cars. So then if you don't think it's about fences and stuff, what is it about? Is it just about traffic getting worse? Because I know that the one of the other arguments that Not Just Bikes made was, let's say that there's a parent in the morning that takes their two kids to two different schools and then goes to work. Now that parent might just order three driverless cars that drops each kid off at their respective schools, and also they go to work. And so now one car journey has become three, or three like physical cars, where that was once one. Is one argument I think that he made. I don't know. What do you see as the biggest negative effects?
Yeah, well, I think that we have now created a situation where the I mean, it's already you see with the taxi services, and as they proliferate, it's just going to get worse and worse. Where the average vehicle occupancy of cars could become significantly less than one, and that's very bad. We have a situation like, where in terms of the cost of providing the service, it's never. I don't think it's ever going to be like I've tried to pencil this out a little. Like I don't think it's ever going to be quite as cheap as as transit, but as it gets within striking distance, like less than $2 a mile, that sort of thing. Like you're going to start to see a situation where it starts significantly impacting transit ridership, and some like free market purists would just be like, okay, well that's because it's better, so people choose the thing that's can offer the service for better and cheaper. But as we've learned from the entire history of cars and how they affect cities, the effect on the individual is very different from the effect on society in general, especially when you consider, where things are built and how entire transportation systems operate. I mean, you could, like, if you're in Tokyo and you go from, point A to point B, almost always, even in Tokyo, like unless it's like in the very most core part of the city, you could have driven there faster than if you had taken the metro. Like this is true even in the most urbanist cities. But what I think a lot of, what people who aren't into urban planning don't appreciate is that, like, okay, but if the city was built to accommodate most people driving, then point B would be way, way further away from point A, and it would take you even longer than the
Right.
metro is taking you now. And
Yeah.
we're going to see a similar thing with self-driving cars, where it could just this is speculation, but like it could just exacerbate that exact same phenomenon, and we end up in a situation that's much worse than what we have now, even for people who don't have cars.
Worse as in like a city where the car occupancy rate is much lower than one is a pretty miserable city because there's even more cars driving around than now. Um, because there's a
Yeah.
bunch of cars driving around that don't need to be, but now they're driving themselves around, and so your streets are even more packed. You have even more traffic, and then people are trying to work around that even more so than they are now. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing that like in the average Angelino's mind, going back to the Sepulveda Pass thing that we're talking about, the valley and the west side are at least 45 minutes apart, an hour and a half apart during rush hour. And what's so crazy is like the option that was chosen, which is the good news, which is to build a tunnel under this mountain and actually put an automated train in it. Speaking of automated things,
Oh
cuts
yeah.
that to, yeah, cuts it to 18 minutes. And like that is so like that is going to completely transform. I mean, like there is really no such thing now as people who live on either side of that mountain, let's say meeting for dinner somewhere, or having or choosing where they live and where they work and all this kind of thing. And driverless cars would not change that, right? Driverless cars would make the 405 even worse, like just because of their volume. I mean, you might say, oh well, traffic is caused by human error, but it is actually caused by volume and throughput. So like on the off ramps on each side. So it doesn't actually, I mean, accidents, I should say collisions are caused by human error, which can create traffic, but lots of other types of traffic are not. It's just caused by like the physical number of cars that can fit down a roadway at any given time, which for a single lane per day is like 10,000. And beyond that, you just get traffic, and that's just sort of how it works.
Yeah, and
But
I
yeah,
would say that like the techno utopians who are like, oh, they'll be driving so much more efficiently. Okay, we have self-driving cars now, and now we can see that they drive equally as efficiently as humans. Like they are not able to like pack in and convoy together effectively. Like they are doing the sort of compression wave stop and go type thing that like, and we've seen this like at events. There's Waymos, queuing up around the block, for events. Just watch them. Watch videos of them if you're not in a city where they're operating. Once again, like they're doing that kind of,
because the amount of time it takes a human to get into a car hasn't changed, right? That which is a part of that journey time, technically.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say, well, what if we replaced every intersection with a roundabout? And then you don't have different direction stuff. But no, there is a physical capacity to every type of roadway infrastructure. It does not matter, even if the cars are communicating. And again, the only way to actually get it to the point where all the cars would be communicating with each other and moving seamlessly without stopping would be, of course, if you deleted all pedestrian crossings at grade and all bike lanes, which are, you'd have to delete all that stuff and then maybe you'd get something. But at that point, it's like, okay, why not build the transit? And as far as your free market friend, like you said, who might say such and such, it's an unfair comparison because transit has not operated in the free market, right? If there were companies like Waymo that got to swoop in and instead of using public utilities like roadways to test out their private products, if there were companies that got to use the ground to like build their own subways and to test out their automatic trains, then that would actually be the free market. And of course, it actually used to be that way. America's great subways were built by private companies, and they were very economically successful. But anyway, so the good news at the end of the day is automatic train in a tunnel was chosen, which is a way better journey time. Because the other option on the table was a monorail that would actually go right on top of the 405, which was kind of crazy. And by the way, probably would have taken away a lane or two to support like the pylons for it, which is funny because they just spent all that money building lanes. At least lanes would have been closed during construction, that's for sure. And it would have been 10 years. So kind of ridiculous. And so luckily that was not chosen. I was looking at why. I'm so glad that they chose the tunnel. I do have one funny thing about it, though. The original alignment was going to be under Bel Air, and there was going to be a single ventilation shaft, which from the outside would have been unnoticeable. It would have looked like a utility box or something up in the mountains that no one would ever see. There was one guy who complained about it named Rosen. I can't remember his first name. Frank Rosen or Zach? Yeah, Frank Rosen.
Is it Fred Rosen?
Fred Rosen. And he was complaining about this thing and how it was going to affect his neighborhood and whatever. And so LA Metro moved where the tunnel's going to be. I mean, it's still going to go the same route. It's just the tunnel's going to be apparently in a spot where it's not going to need the ventilation shaft. And what I thought was funny is they had a summary of the like 8,000 public comments that they got. They said 90% of commenters highly preferred the tunnel over the monorail and da-da-da. And I said commenters also preferred not having a ventilation shaft. And I was like, there is no way that a significant number of these 8,000 who were all pro-tunnel people were also super concerned. I'm like, this bullet point is just for this one guy. But you know what? If the tunnel being a different location doesn't make it that much more expensive or doesn't change the price, then it's like whatever, I guess. But if it ends up being significantly more expensive, then that really is a problem. But from what I can tell, I don't think it will be. So that's the good news from LA Metro. Alex?
Wow, we have really procrastinated delivering the bad news.
Yes, although we did take a break for a minute. But what is the bad news, Alex? So at the same meeting they made this decision, they made another decision about a different transit project. You want to explain it?
Yeah, well, it's all the tall buildings around the transit projects. So there's two pieces of bad news. One, the LA Metro board has officially come out against SB 79. They're saying, no, we don't want the tall buildings next to our trains. Please stop making us build them. Now, you might be wondering.
All would be 6-story. We went over SB 79 on this podcast, I think, a number of times. But yeah, it's a state law that would allow. I have a
feeling you will keep doing that, unfortunately.
It's a good one. I mean, it's a super obvious one. Nick, who lived in Vancouver, would talk about how they did this a long time ago. But it's basically, and they allowed actual tall buildings like 20 stories. We're talking in LA. 6-story. Oh my goodness. 6-story buildings within a quarter mile of transit stops. And you said, don't make us build them. Of course, it would be private developers building them, and LA Metro would actually be getting the ridership and the increased tax revenue. So it wouldn't even be
cost to themselves. It's truly ridiculous. And you're wondering, okay, why are they doing this? It's not the staff at LA Metro. No actual Metro staff are saying stop SB 79, very few. It is the board who is their politicians. right? These people, they're all the county supervisors, plus the mayor and her 3 appointees, and the who, Karen Bass, very anti SB 79. She's possibly the most anti SB 79, the leader of the Les Resistance. And we have and then we have the rest of them are politicians from smaller municipalities across LA County. All of these people have a pitchfork wielding horde of NIMBYs breathing down their necks saying stop SB 79. So when people say, and this is used as a talking point now, I was recently at a community meeting where council member Heather Hutt was speaking, and she said, "Can you believe it? At LA Metro, it's not just the NIMBYs, it's LA Metro itself doesn't even want it." It's like, yeah, no, the politicians on the board don't want it. No, everybody inside LA Metro is very psyched about the tall buildings. So it's such a joke. But here's the thing: this is just a statement. It's a memo being sent to the state government saying, "Please, can you exempt LA County from SB 79?"
Which is insane. Yeah.
Please, can you exempt the largest transit system in the state's most populous county?
In the country's most populous county.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you exempt us from building 6-story apartment buildings on quarter-mile circles around rapid transit stops, which would be a tiny fraction of the overall land of the county? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's crazy because the way that this is being framed by every politician in LA County, almost all of them. I mean, there are a couple exceptions, Nithya Raman, the good one, who, actually support this. They're like, no, we should build tall buildings, actually. But most of them, they're pitching this as, not just a piece of legislation that was snuck through without any, warning, even though this was very highly covered. They're also trying to pitch this as Scott Wiener, he's from the Bay Area. This was something that came from the Bay Area for the Bay Area, and basically LA is being targeted by accident. And, this is, for instance, Jacqueline DuPont Walker on the board, very, notable person in LA politics, was this is, it's just simple and, common sense that we should test this in the Bay before we bring it here. But it's such a joke because LA is the place that this was absolutely intended for. It was 100% intended for LA, possibly even more than the Bay Area, because at least the Bay Area actually has somewhat of a structure for trying to build tall buildings around transit. It just doesn't work very well because of all the red tape. But here's the thing, LA is barely even trying. So yeah.
Yeah, their new zoning update from a year ago was definitely in the barely even trying category. They upzoned existing plots of land that were already zoned for mixed use. They just upzoned them a little bit and then didn't touch anything else. And that was their big rezoning thing. And so, yeah, they didn't even really look at transit stations at all. The one thing I said I was nervous about beforehand, and maybe you have thoughts on this, is that it would create, that SB 79 could create new NIMBYs, in the sense that if a subway line is now proposed somewhere, not only are people going to be NIMBYs against it because it's a subway line, but also because wherever the stations are located is going to be affected by upzoning, and so people might come out against the subway line. Now, I know that language was then put into SB 79, which does not include future projects. But from my understanding, that's future planned projects. You can't zone something because there's a planned transit stop. Once that planned transit stop opens, though, it's unclear to me. I think it would still be upzoned, right?
Yeah.
So
there's a cutoff, and I know that it's different for bus rapid transit versus light rail versus heavy rail. I think heavy rail doesn't have the exempt. It's time for a fact check. We need that. We need to be like, hey, Google that, like Joe Rogan.
Oh yeah. What's the guy, Jamie?
Oh, Janie.
I think
Jamie?
it's Jamie. Yeah, he's
Jamie,
like, Jamie,
Google
can you
that.
bring that up? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But the point is, could Could you see people protesting against, let's say, the Vermont subway, which is a long anticipated project that hasn't broken ground, because they don't want upzoning around the stations? I mean,
well, this is interesting. I think Glendale is probably, it's all eyes on Glendale. Like you see this, like these politicians, especially the ones from the sector city representatives on the board, who are like, yeah, we're seeing massive opposition from local politicians. We have like, Ara Najarian, we have, Fernando Dutra, we have, and like, with all respect, like I've met some of these board members. I don't think that they're bad people, but I would ask them to take a look in the mirror and be like, okay, who is doing the opposing here? Mm-hmm. Who is, like, you're a local politician who is on the board and has the power to try to overcome this opposition, but instead, in most cases, and I don't want to like point the fingers too directly, but like they're kind of fueling the opposition that then they're blaming, and then they're pointing the finger elsewhere at the state density mandates and saying that's causing the opposition when they really should look in the mirror. And and once again, like a lot of the people who are the most NIMBY-ish on the board, I'll just speak in generalities here, they are also like the fiscal conservatives, which is insane to me, because if you want to squeeze the most juice out of the investment of the taxpayers, putting tall buildings next to trains is a good way to get more benefit out of the many billions of dollars that have been invested building those trains. It's just so simple.
It's also more free market, which is the great hypocrisy of conservative NIMBYism.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, the hypocrisy of conservative NIMBYism is you're messing up. Why are you messing up with the free market? And then the hypocrisy of liberal NIMBYism is you are creating an economic condition that is like massively inequitable, is possibly the greatest, in coastal states like California, is possibly the greatest threat to economic equality is the housing shortage.
I actually think the greatest hypocrisy of liberal NIMBYism is the environmental angle, because that's the one I've dealt with the most. So to me, like I've met with my, again, I'll also speak in generalities. I've met with local politicians where I've lived who are very, very left-wing. I think of themselves as left-wing and very liberal, who sort of came of age, in the 70s when the EPA was created and all this stuff. And they were taught as kids, well, two main things. They were taught to hate nuclear energy because the nuclear is big bad. And they were also taught that greedy Republican developers want to come in, they want to pour all the concrete that's super bad for the environment, they want to pave paradise and put up a parking lot, right? Like the song suggests. And that in order to stop that from happening, you need to regulate construction and basically make it very, very difficult to build anything new, because building itself is bad for the environment. Now, what's interesting is there is a kernel of truth in that concrete is actually one of the largest, concrete preparation is one of the largest emitters of greenhouse gases.
Is it more than 5% at this point?
It's not more than 5%, but I'm saying for a process, it has like a massive. It's true. However, what they fail to then realize is when your jurisdiction stops allowing building, which they all stopped allowing, let's say 50 years ago was really when things were set in stone. That means that the jurisdictions on the periphery that are not as liberal and want the investment and are more open to the free market, they're going to allow all that building to take place there, mature to a point where people become NIMBYs, set things in stone, and then the next thing happens with the next jurisdiction over. And so that's actually what creates a suburban sprawl, because there's some number of people who want to live in a single family home and commute for an hour and a half. I don't know how many. There's some number of people who want to do that. But there's also a number of people who would have liked to live in your more central jurisdiction and commute 20 minutes to work. But because you didn't allow anything to get built and you set your city's population to whatever it was in 1975, which is like what Santa Barbara did, it means that now, in 1975, there were, let's say, 20% of people were commuting in. Now 70% of people are commuting in, because now those homes, in other words, that construction still took place. It just took place in a way that was worse for the environment, because you added way more VMT, which is vehicle miles traveled per person, than otherwise would have occurred. Like San Francisco, for instance, the city of San Francisco, a lot of people don't know this, the city of San Francisco is really not that big. I think it has like 450,000 people. Whereas if it had the density of Manhattan, it would have 3 million people. But like, And there are tons of people who commute into San Francisco who would love to live there and who can't. So anyway, the point is that to me is the greatest hypocrisy of left-wing NIMBYism, is this like fake or like misunderstanding of how the environment and greenhouse gases actually works, and that transportation, because you said it's like 5% is concrete pouring. Yeah, and transportation is between what I've read 35 and 40%. So that's like way worse. Like having a bunch of people drive is way worse for the environment than pouring skyscrapers worth of concrete.
Yes, but the one, but you know, that one we can blame on the evil corporations, whereas if you blame any carbon emissions on individual ye working class proletariat, you're greenwashing, you're part of the problem. But riddle me this, Sully.
Okay.
What if you know, when you purchase a house, you are buying into a community that you expect to be a certain way. Now, imagine hypothetically, you purchased a house and had a train in the backyard, and you were okay with that. But then an evil government entity decided to build another train on top of that train. And then there are too many trains. And that is just one train too much. What would you do then?
Alex, let's say, I'm going to add to your hypothetical, which is a great segue, by the way. Let's say that evil government agency was not only going to put another train on top of that train, but to compensate me as a homeowner, was actually going to build new and improved latest technology sound walls along that train line behind my backyard, whereas now I only have a wooden fence back there, okay? And in the extra space that wasn't going to be taken up by new train tracks, they were going to put in like this great linear park with a bike path, whereas right now it's just empty dirt. Let's add that to the hypothetical. What would I have a right to then?
But Sully, it's not like the existing train horns that I've only now recently decided I hate, despite buying a home next to an active freight right-of-way. It's not like they're sweetening the deal even more by creating a quiet zone and adding additional quad gates at every crossing to create a quiet zone and get rid of the train horns, which wasn't even part of the project originally and has just been put in to appease me. Come on, that would be ridiculous.
Right, that's another.
Are they?
So we should tell the listeners what we're referring to. We're referring to the K-Line extension, or the South Bay extension, or whatever the heck you want to call it. It's honestly a part of.
They call it at the Metro board meeting, the Sea Line extension.
The Sea Line. That's hilarious.
Are you still calling it that?
Yeah, no, there's no way. That's so funny. It would have been called. Anyway, the lines have gotten switched around, so that doesn't make any sense. But it's a part of LA I've spent very little time in. I've been to Redondo Beach and Torrance once. Because, and I'll actually tell you why, it's very far from a freeway, this part of LA. It's like the bottom left-hand corner of Los Angeles that kind of sticks out into the ocean a little bit. There isn't a conveniently accessible freeway. What's crazy is when you're all the way down there, you can see the downtown skyline. But when you look at it, it's crazy. You look at the skyline, and you're like, I know for a fact that at like 5 p.m., that skyline is like 2 hours away, which is crazy because you could see it. And it's like 16, maybe 17 miles. Anyway, yeah, so they want to extend the K-Line south to this area. The Metro staff recommended, we already own a freight right-of-way. Let's put it there. It goes north-south, exactly where we want to put this freaking train. It's super wide, so it's like wide enough technically that you could put a bunch of tracks across it, maybe 4. But we're not even going to do that. We're going to set aside all this space for a multi-use path, and we're going to plant trees, and we're going to put up sound walls and quad gates. And the people were very upset because LA is a city where the people who live right next to the train get to dictate how 15 million people move around or should move around, which is totally wild. Anyway, so there was the secondary option, which Metro staff did not suggest, which is instead to put the train down the middle of a street that we do not own, where massive utility relocation will have to take place, where the entire roadway will have to get reconfigured, and when all the turn lanes and all the other things going on there, and we'll have to work with Caltrans, a notoriously difficult agency to work with, and it will cost far more money, and we definitely don't have the money to do it, whereas we will have the money to do the freight right-of-way a half mile over. Those were the two options.
Yeah, this is going to be really difficult because in order to get, so this is the second one that they moved it to is called the Hawthorne alignment, Hawthorne Boulevard. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the really tricky part is to get to Hawthorne Boulevard, they have to do this insane loopity ramp thing that they haven't even fully fleshed out yet. That's going to go over the 405 freeway. and then squiggle down somehow to get back down onto Hawthorne Boulevard. Again, they have no idea how to do this. So, but
Because staff really purposely treated it like a not well thought out option, because they didn't. They're like, we'll put this in here just for you to look at. But it's no one. Here's the thing. I thought that some of the board members would vote for that. What is your take, Alex? Why was this a unanimous decision? What the heck happened there? You're saying not one of the board members thought it was a bad idea.
Well, as I told you, I'm not a stranger to trying to politic the LA Metro Board, and I'm a little familiar with the politics, but this one was very confusing. I think they didn't want it to be messy. If you look at one insight from watching the live stream is Janice Hahn did not just say "I" when they called her name. She said, well, it was unbelievable. Maybe you can splice this in, but it's like, she's like, well, like she's hesitating a lot. She's saying like, I know this may take longer. This may extend the timeline, but this will make people happier. God willing, we will get this thing done. Like she really clearly is terrified. And there's an interesting thing going on where Torrance, the city south of Lawndale, is like, we want our train done. We do not care at all about the Hawthorne, but about, loud trains behind your houses, or just like, come on, relax. We just want this train built, right? But Lawndale, north of Torrance, is all in on put it down Hawthorne Boulevard to protect our property values. So you had this like city on city violence, and and I believe Janice Hahn, does she
We're doing live journalism again. Where is she from?
We're doing live journalism. We've got the 4th district. Yes. Okay. So the 4th district, Torrance is in Janice Hahn's district. So they're the ones, putting pressure on her, like, do not mess up our train. Do not completely destroy our train project. And then Lawndale, the border is right between her district and another county supervisor named Holly J. Mitchell, who is, has lots of pressure being put on her by the Lawndale NIMBYs. So a very interesting thing that happened is that, like, I mean, this would not have happened without Mitchell, I'm convinced. Like, Mitchell was the person who took up the torch on this and rammed it through the board. And I think what probably happened is that, and I don't have the insight into this, but that there was some sort of horse trading going on where, like, Mitchell promised favors of some type, either I'll vote for your thing in the future or something, in order to get this insane vote through to, take the train off the train tracks and put it in a, as of yet, completely imaginary planned viaduct over a highway.
So is there some weird silver lining where we're going to get some interesting project that she's going to vote for now in the future? Is it going to be the Inglewood People Mover? I mean, what is it going to be? That's what I heard. That's what Nanderd said it could be.
James Butts.
Right.
Yes. But his theory was that maybe James Butts, it wasn't like a horse trading thing, right? It was like, James Butts wants to sandbag and kill this project so he can use the money for his Inglewood People Mover.
He said that like Doofenshmirtz.
Yeah.
So wait. What? Yeah. Is there some interesting project that we're gonna get because she votes for it? Like, is there something interesting? Who knows? This is crazy. So, what is your prediction on whether or not will this Hawthorne alignment like literally ever be built? Because there's a good chance it won't. Right? It's not conjecture to say that it couldn't. So.
We don't even have a handle on like what the cost estimate is on this. Like, this could have completely killed the project. But
how many Lawndale NIMBYs? It is interesting to think like how many people can affect a project this important. It can't be more than a few thousand. I would be surprised if it was a few hundred. Honestly, like if you look at the alignment, it's a very low density area. Is this any kind of final straw for you, in your opinion, on in any way changing or reforming the Metro Board in ways that have been suggested or not? Like, what do you think? You don't have to answer, by the way.
Is this being recorded?
Yes.
Yeah. I I don't want to. So wait, what is the current proposal that got killed in the California Senate? It was like they want to expand the board from 13 to 26 people.
I don't know who would the extra 13 people even be. I have no idea.
I think
I don't know.
the idea was they would be appointed by the state. So the thing is that like people are very some people view all of LA Metro's problems as stemming from like local politicians running the show, right? So, and now you could really make an argument when it comes to the SB 79 thing, where like this would not, LA Metro would not be officially opposing SB 79 if it wasn't being basically hijacked by the local politicians as a messaging vehicle for their NIMBY pet project. But I don't know, is the antidote bringing in people from the state government to try and, to try to dilute local power? I mean, like there are problems that come with that. Like, I mean, in Pennsylvania, I mean, where, the state funds a very high percentage of SEPTA, the SEPTA board, they have 5 people from the state is my memory. And they, that's like a third of the board. And, one of them is, 2 of them are appointed by the Assembly and Senate Democrats, and the other 2 are appointed by the Assembly and Senate Republicans, and then one's appointed by the governor. And, I mean, this does mean that they always have an eye to Harrisburg, but, I don't know. I mean, I think that this would make it much more chaotic. And what you could end up having, and maybe the people eyeing this reform, this is what they want, is to have a cohesive block of state-level appointed members who basically just, advocate for Sacramento's interests.
Well, it's crazy how far away Sacramento is from LA, by the way. But I mean, just physically, what would Sacramento? I mean, in a case like this, what would Sacramento's interest really be then? Would their interest be to put it down the Metro-owned right-of-way, but then piss off a bunch of voters?
I think it might be. I mean, the optimists would say, they're not going to be like, yes, oppose SB 79, build less housing.
Well, of course, that one's obvious. The alignment thing seems less obvious to me from a Sacramento perspective.
I don't know. I mean, for Holly J. Mitchell, these, like, it's definitely, by the way, it's definitely less than 100. You're like a couple hundred Lawndale people. I'm like, no. This is, like, you really just see the people. You're like, what is his name? It comments at, like, every board meeting. He's like, Ray Hollard, retired aerospace engineer and Lawndale homeowner. The Hawthorne alignment is the hippitest, hoppitest, it all just blurs together. And, like, there really are, you do not see that many names outside of a couple, like, big ticket events where they, manage to bring in a ton of people to comment. Like, it really is a pretty small number of very engaged people, which, I mean, for my and for our project to, get fair enforcement back, that's heartening. Apparently, you don't need that many people to make change. You can just, with enough clever lobbying, you can manage to achieve anything with basically no one.
But yeah, it is.
Also,
oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's a double-edged sword because it's much easier to stop things from happening than to start things from happening.
Yeah, from my perspective, all it really just shows is that there is something wrong with the board. Like, even if it's just like a lack of understanding of transit and budgets, I don't know, like I'm using very basic terms that other cities maybe it's because I'm not as engaged in other places, but it seems like other places don't make as big of of stumbles and mistakes when it comes to things this this headline, this important. It just seems so misguided. Maybe it's just because we're starting already in a city where, unlike let's say New York, we're starting in a city where like very few people use transit. So it's not like there's this built-in user base that advocates for itself. I mean, the Metro Board members might not.
I don't know by what standards. I mean, I think it is a pretty large user base by American city standards.
Oh, no, sure.
It's
In terms of raw
similar
number, I'm
to-
talking about percentage. And I'm also talking about, there's a really interesting paper that I read a while back, which looked at like the percentage of people over median income in different American cities that use transit, that commute by transit rather than by car. And LA is the lowest. Actually, the highest is not New York. It is Chicago, where apparently 60% of riders make over the median income of the city. New York, it's like 50%. LA, it's 3%. So only 3% of people above median income are riding. Unfortunately, usually people who make above median income are also the highest propensity voters. They're the ones who donate to political campaigns, obviously, because they're wealthier. They're the more engaged ones. They generally are more likely to be politically aware and speak English, like all of that stuff, right? So that's really what I'm talking about. Whereas, like I said, in Chicago, if 60% of your riders are making above the median income, that means that it's more likely that when transit decisions are being made, you have a lot more people engaging who transit to them is like a daily thing. But yeah. Anyway, I don't know. It just shows that there's something very dysfunctional, like and wrong. Because at the end of the day, not only are they shooting the citizens of LA County in the foot by picking a alignment that may never get built as opposed to one that could, they're shooting themselves in the foot as an agency, because like applying for grants for this thing is going to be really silly and difficult, and like it's not going to look good when they apply for a grant for this project, and like whether it's this government or another one that's in charge, and they're going to look at it and be like, you could have picked this other thing that's way less expensive. Why are we going to give you money for this if you flip on a dime for NIMBYs? There's like so many things. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not an expert about reform when it comes to Metro Board reform. I have no idea, but I just know that there seems to be something wrong.
Like my point, and I'm mainly kind of just presenting the viewpoint of the people who want to drastically reform the Metro Board, is
right.
Like if one of them was sitting here, they would say, like, Sully, that's the whole point. The people who are on the board do not see it as them shooting themselves in the foot. They see it as them balancing one of many, many things they have to deal with in their political career. They don't see themselves as LA Metro. They are not LA Metro. They are a bunch of politicians who once a month have to come to this meeting where they oversee this board that, abstractly governs a bunch of trains and buses that they barely think about.
Right, or probably don't ride. That's actually a very interesting way to put it. Do you know the other transit board? I mean, you mentioned Philadelphia, but yeah, like in New York, I don't know how it works in Canada, but in New York is like the MTA board made up of local politicians. But again, even if it was, like I'm saying, in New York, transit plays a bigger role in more people's lives. So who knows? But you're right.
Most agencies, the people are appointees. So
oh wow, okay.
They're not politicians doing it as a side gig. They're appointees.
That's so interesting.
And
appointees from where? Like who appoints them?
Well, often, for instance, like SEPTA, where it's it's counties. They're appointed by each county gets 2 people, including Philadelphia, but Philly, as part of their charter, Philadelphia does have a special tool, which is that if both of their 2 board members don't like something, they can hit the veto button together. So that sort of, it gives the suburbs, it gives everyone a voice, because, they're all part of the same system, but it prevents the suburbs from screwing over Philly. And then once again, because like I mentioned before, because the state contributes so much money, they have appointees too. So it's critics would say this creates a patronage job situation where somebody who was there's a lot of somebody, you'll get like lawyers, people who are on campaigns and stuff. It's like here, you helped me with my campaign, so now I'm going to set you up with this little job that is like somewhat important, maybe. I don't know. It has to do with trains and buses.
Right.
But the optimist would say, look, these people who are on the boards, yes, they have day jobs, but they are not like politicians. They are specialized bureaucrats who are, given the tools and the space and the focus to think only about their transit system. And by and large, they do. Even the ones who don't ride it very often, which are, unfortunately, most of the suburban ones, are still, pretty focused on SEPTA in their political lives. So I never thought that I would be pointing to SEPTA's governance as the model, but
Hey, it does sound better. Although, of course, the appointees could still. I mean, obviously, they personally know the people who appointed them. So, I mean, I would assume so they can still be influenced by the politicians. But yeah, you're right. They are not the politicians themselves, which means they're not afraid of being voted out of office because they made a decision that people didn't like or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up the show. So, Alex, we always used to say, where can the good people find you on any social media if you'd like them to? If you'd like.
I don't know if I would. I'm on Blue Sky, so that should tell you all you need to know.
Okay. All right. That is all we need to know. And the show is sponsored by, guess what? We don't have a sponsor. It's sponsored by you. If you would like to join the Patreon, it's $1 a month. And we use that money to help make the show better, like to buy equipment and stuff like that. And also so we don't have a sponsor. So please join for $1 if you'd like to. And thanks for listening, Alex. What is your sign-off message? Put you on the spot. It could be very simple. It could just be like, bikes, good.
My sign-off message is, don't mess with Jersey. Don't drive an e-bike without a license in New Jersey. Get your e-bike license.
Don't mess with Jersey. All right. And I'm going to say, tall buildings good. Don't mess with SB 79. All right.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Right.
LA Metro Board, if you're listening, we might possibly want to fire all of you. Maybe not. Don't touch our SB 79.
Maybe not fire. Maybe just add 13 more members so that you get drowned out. All right.
Or maybe like 30. I don't know. We could just make it a stadium.
Why don't we make the LA Metro Board? Yes, we can make the LA Metro Board as many people as could fit in Dodger Stadium. It could just be everyone's board.
And then you have to like line up, right? It's first come, first serve, and then everyone has these little buttons on their seat that they can vote on every motion.
I have very bad news for you, Alex. If that was the case, I would guess that fewer than 100 people would show up.
I don't think so. I think it would be
A packed house, do you think?
Popular.
All right. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Adios.